turn is it anyway? A board gaming podcast where we talk about this great hobby with our gaming group. I'm Becky, the current first player, and the main focus of the episode today is on games that stand the test of time. But before we get into that, let's introduce our other players today. We've got Kerley.
Hello.
Ian.
Hello.
And JP.
How's it going?
How are we all today?
Pretty good.
Not bad, not bad.
Yeah, a bit
All
tired.
good, thank you.
I'm a bit tired.
Oh, working hard.
Actually
No,
been...
not working.
No, that's what I was going to say.
Playing too many games.
No,
Never play enough games. No, I've just celebrated my wife Shell's 40th birthday.
Happy birthday, Shell.
Yeah, happy birthday to you, my love.
I'm sure she listens, right?
She does.
Does she actually?
She has,
okay.
She has to. It's
Yeah,
in
I
the
was gonna
contract.
say.
You force her to. Okay.
Yeah, it's in the contract. She makes sure that I'm not slagging her off or I'm just genuinely behaving.
In the contract. Do you mean your marriage?
Yes, that's it. Yeah.
She probably doesn't want you to call it a contract.
No. Yeah, my human binding contract for life. But no, we had a great weekend. Lots of beer. We had this really because we had rented this place that had a swimming pool. And we had this intense competitive water volleyball tournament at about 1 a.m. And brilliant. So much fun.
I'm sure everyone else who was living around the area was very pleased.
They probably told us to shut up. But no, it was great fun and we enjoyed it. So I'm a bit tired, but always ready to talk games.
Now I'm a bit sad because today's my last day of annual leave.
Oh.
Yeah, back to work tomorrow.
Boo.
Hey ho.
It's got to be done.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Before we get stuck into the main topic of today, let's talk about Hex, where we round up the latest games we've been playing recently. So, who wants to start?
I'm going to talk about a game that Davey very briefly mentioned a couple of episodes ago. And I say briefly mentioned, it was about 20 seconds. So I feel like I need to revisit this game, which is Anno 1800. So this game I have no knowledge of. It's a PC game apparently. Kerley's going to look at me and go, of course it is, you
Yes,
idiot.
it is, yeah.
But it's a very well regarded PC resource management strategic kind of game, I assume. I have no idea. It's basically set around the 1800, funny enough. Where you like do something with ships? I don't know what
the idea is you all have your own islands and you build up you land there as an explorer and you build it up and you
build industries.
Build industry slowly from stone cutting and making bricks going all the way up to more
like the settlers.
Yeah,
in that respect, but I still love the settlers.
But yeah, like you said, the way you described it actually was quite chillingly good. It's just a resource manager, like you said.
I thought you were joking because it's.
I was just like, yeah, no, that is absolutely true.
So the board game adaptation of it was it's bloody brilliant.
There's lots of icons, though, isn't there? I was helping to pop all the pieces out because Kerley hates popping the pieces out of games, and I was just flabbergasted by how many different little icons there could be.
Yeah, I think Davey mentioned it on the other episode. We said, he quoted me saying, I think this game's going to be a bit simple. and I think I kind of stand by it in the fact that it's simple mechanically, which means you can get to it straight away. It's clicking very fast in terms of what you need to do. Where the complexity comes in the actual amount of choices and paths that you need to go down, which is actually what makes it fun. But essentially, you've kind of got this middle board, right, where you got all the industry tiles are, like you say, the bricks, the pigs, the sausages, and the gins, and all the other things. There's loads of them, isn't
all the
there?
other things you need for life.
Yeah,
all the standard things.
Yeah. And on then there's there's a requirement that you need to have, like for pigs, for sausages, you need to have coal and pigs industries, and therefore you can unlock the sausages. Which should be good in anyone's book. But the whole purpose is that you have this hand of cards and they represent the population of your workers and the different types. And on the cards have your requirements of what you want to get to. So it kind of gives you a path to go towards. And that whole mechanic of basically the game ends once you've played all your hand of cards. But throughout the game you want more workers, so you end up drawing more cards and you have more puzzle. So it kind of it enhances the puzzle that you need to work out. And it's brilliant. Yeah. I just really enjoyed it. Surprised me, actually. I just thought, this is going to be another dry trading resource worker placement kind of game, but I just thought the hand management, that aspect of it is what I really enjoyed, is working out, right, if I get that card done and that gives me this and I can get that thing and do that, and you're comboing left, right and centre. It's brilliant.
It was just quite funny from an outsider point of view, hearing you go, who's got sausages?
Yeah.
Who's got this? Who's got this?
Yeah.
And it was just quite funny.
It's the trading bit, and this is the brilliant bit about it. It's like, I'm just waiting for someone to build sausages, because if they build the sausages, then I can trade those sausages and use it to get this thing that I really want. But if I have to build it, then I'm going to have to invest all 3 turns to get sausages. And then someone builds it and everyone goes, yeah, sausages are available.
Sausages ahoy!
Yeah, and obviously that's probably more true for the more kind of complex resources like tractors and steam. And
I think everyone will be most happy when sausages become available. That sounds thematically correct.
Yeah. It's just great fun. It just works really well. It's quick as well, quick turns. And we played it. Our first game under 3 hours, I'd say.
Oh yeah, well under 3 hours.
Maybe close to 2.
I think, to be honest though, one of the things that it impressed me about that game is the lots of different new-ish themes that there were and mechanics.
Yeah.
So one of which was the fact that, because, as you said, the end of the game is triggered by you having played all your cards, well, you don't have to draw very many at all. I drew absolutely loads so that I had loads of workers and could do more. You drew less, so the game finished earlier, but you had to deal with having less workers to do what you wanted to do. So it was an interesting
balance, wasn't it?
Balance, yeah. And then it ended quite early because you went down that particular tactic. I think it would have gone on longer otherwise, but that was an interesting one. Because even though you finished the game, did you end up winning?
No, second.
Exactly. Yeah. So just because you've managed to finish it and get that extra bonus for finishing and you decide doesn't mean that you actually win. So it's quite interesting.
Not that JP's bitter at all.
No.
I said that through gritted teeth when you were like, did you win? No.
I still got one more point to Kerley.
That's a moral victory.
That's a moral victory. No, but it was, you're right, the timing of when do you end that game
is critical.
Critical, and we don't know the game well enough to know when that is at this stage. But yeah, just really good fun. I'd recommend it to anyone who kind of, likes games, to be honest. It's pretty good.
So, game that I've played with JP as well, to be fair, so we could say about Anno and Civ, to be honest.
Sorry,
is Civilization, the board game, the 2010 version. There are a few different versions now, but I'm not saying this is the best one because I haven't given enough time to the other ones, but it's certainly the one that I was recommended, and we are loving it so far. Absolutely loving it. I have been through and talked about it briefly before, so I won't spend too long on it. However, I haven't talked about it since getting the new expansions, which is the main one with Wisdom and Warfare. So it's basically a Civilization game based around, it was released around the same time as Civilization 5 on the PC, but it does have fairly similar elements to Civilization 4. The idea being you start off your civilization back in, God, I'm trying to remember what it was. It was like 2000 BC in the original game, something like that. And you're slowly building up from one town, one little village, through time, more cities, bigger civilizations, getting new technology as you go through fights and, exploration and everything else. So it's your fairly classic 4X game, really.
Yeah.
And just we've played it a few times before, but I would say this one felt like a little bit of okay, we all understand what we're doing now. We all understand the game a little bit better. It flowed a lot better, and we had the time to actually do it, which previously I think had been an issue because I turned up here for not our first game, but like our second game, and we had to do it at yours for some reason, so I couldn't set it up prior. I turned up at about 1:45 the hour of when we were meant to be starting. It took about an hour to set up. It was the biggest pain in the ass to set up game that I've come across, to be honest. But because it was all ready, pretty much ready to go at 7, and it took us about 3.5, 4 hours in the end.
Yeah.
And even then, we could have done that a lot quicker. It's just a lot of AP moments, But just to say, we thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a really close game, back and forth. I got to nuke Davey, which made my absolute.
He is very
That's
happy.
done. I don't even care that I got I lost on the last turn. I got to nuke Davey. I'm happy. It was just really good fun. Looking forward to the next one, loads. So, and I think JP, you go along with that.
Yeah, 100%. I think that last game is the first time the new expansions, not only Wisdom and Warfare, but Fame and Fortune as well, just all I don't know, it's called kind of clicked because I've not played the expansions enough. Well, we've not played the base game enough, in all fairness. And yeah, it all just kind of came together. And there's a moment that I just loved, which was I was trying to I played as Gandhi basically. I was like the Indian,
right.
which is like, leave me alone, let me just do my thing. Peace and love, man. And
Let me guess, Kerley was having none of that.
no,
Davey's
he was directly opposite me, so I was like the furthest away from Kerley, and then I had Jay to my right and Davey kind of ahead of me. And
So was Kerley sort of defending your honour a bit when he nuked Davey? Was it kind of, like,
no,
leave
they were at
JP
each,
alone?
No, they were at each
Oh, that was
other.
happening anyway.
Yeah, that was happening anyway. So there's a moment where Davey's Aztec forces were coming down, and I had like these culture cards, which is what you kind of can play and prevent nasty things from happening. And I managed to kill one of his kind of units off before we initiate the battle, and it literally came down to a draw, right? And the defender always breaks the ties in the draw. It was that close, because if he would have won that, game over for me.
Yeah.
So I managed to kind of hold on and fend him off at a point where I had like crap technologies. My military was pants, and and it just enabled me to kind of push the cultural victory, which I managed to win my first ever Civ game, which I was well chuffed because I never won that in my life, and I hardly know what I'm doing in it, let alone winning it.
It was a really interesting game because Jay started off really weak.
Yeah.
Davey started off really strong as like the big warmongery faction. Yeah. I kind of fought with him a lot, then nuked him. He went skydiving down, like, right, okay, he's gone basically. Yeah. And you kind of snuck in and won the victory. So it was kind of like one of those little underdog moments.
It came to like
to see.
You would have won on the next turn.
Yeah.
And I just had to delay you somehow.
Yeah.
And I luckily stopped you. And I was like, yeah, have some of that. It was very good.
But very good fun anyway.
Yeah.
Do the expansions make such a difference then? Do they change the game dynamic massively?
So the Fame and Fortune expansion adds, in my opinion, more variety. So you've got different ways of winning. You've got a little bit of balancing on some of it. You've got more wonders. You've got, God, is that the city-state introduction? Or was that, yeah, so I think that was the city-states. More civilizations to choose from. So it's all about variety. However, the big one is Wisdom and Warfare, because that actually, although it did add all of those things, a bit more variety, a few more civilizations, but it totally revamped the combat. So the combat cards were, and we won't go into too much detail, but essentially the cards were a little bit of a rock, paper, scissors. So you had just a simple change that I wouldn't have thought made a difference, but every card that you drew had a health value of usually 1, 2, or 3, somewhere around that area. Well, in the original game, it was just 1 damage and 1 health, 2 damage, 2 health. They were all linear like that. Whereas the new version introduces asymmetrical ones. So you have one guy that does 1 damage but has got 3 health, and another one that does 3 damage has got 1 health, and another one that's got 2 of each. So it's very much there's a lot more variation, and it makes a huge difference as to what tactics you do and what.
Because then you've got your kind of like. Some of your units then are more like glass cannons.
Yeah, exactly.
You've got your kind of defenders that you just put out there.
And I wouldn't have thought that would make a big difference, but it just does. I can't put my finger on why, but it just does.
But that's what a good expansion does, right? Isn't it? Is just not make fundamental sweeping changes, but just tweak things in a way that adds some interest or some new dynamics.
I was going to talk about Bärenpark.
Bear Tetris.
Yeah, and it's just a small box game of Tetris, basically, where the shapes you choose have got certain victory points on them, and you're building a bear park. Bärenpark is German for bear park. It's really quick to set up, like super quick, and really easy to play, easy to learn the rules. Kerley obviously has one every time. Although, a couple of days ago we did draw, but the tie break was unused pieces, and of course he had like a few more unused pieces than I had. Of course. Which is typical.
So I think Kerley would point out that wasn't a draw.
No,
that was another victory for
No,
him.
actually, despite my reputation, I said let's just call it a draw because it really was. But yeah.
But it's a really
Not a
cute.
big fan
Then you got the rule book out, and let's just have a look. I think I do still win.
I'm not actually a big fan of tiebreakers.
But it is a really cute game. You were quite reluctant at first to play, weren't you? Because it looks kind of. Well, I think you thought that it was totally purely puzzle based, when actually it's quite a lot more about efficiency and how quickly do I complete this park versus do I choose the higher point pieces or whatever. But you've been.
Yeah. So it actually strikes similarly to Anno 1800 with you, actually, JP.
Yeah.
In the fact that this one just caught me totally by surprise because I really didn't expect to like it. because I'm not a big fan of Sagrada. I'm not a huge fan of Azor. I'm not a huge fan of anything that's too puzzly. I don't know why. I can't even put my finger on why, but I don't have a great time while playing them. And I thought that fit into the same bracket. Really doesn't. It's totally right up my alley. Efficiency, and there isn't a puzzle involved really at all beyond kind of
Does this fit
efficiency.
Here?
Yeah, beyond efficiency, and it is just plays really quick, really good fun, lots of interaction, quite a satisfying game. I would say it's my favourite really small game. Is it really good? Me and Becky played it like 3 or 4 times in this week.
Is it quite like the, I'm not going to compare it to Tapestry, but is it like the putting the buildings down on the mat in Tapestry where you're trying to fit the pieces around to get stuff?
Yes, but more forgiving.
Okay,
Yeah, more forgiving in the way that, there's always a good option. It's just whether there was a more optimal option,
yes.
So, but yeah, not dissimilar, I would say. Not dissimilar.
Yeah, I like it because it's the only thing I can say that is bad about it is the box kind of divider, rubbish. Throw it out. Don't even bother.
You are quite the connoisseur of box inserts. So your standards are high.
Yeah, I was disappointed with this. So my preferred method of organising the box, should anybody be interested, is have all the pieces in baggies for a 2-player game, and add the extra ones in a separate baggie for 3-player game and another baggie for 4-player game. That way, when it's just the 2 of you, you can just dump out the ones that are 2-player, simple. And it is really easy.
Sense.
Yeah, you could teach a child to play. It's all about use this piece, cover over the little picture of, say, a wheelbarrow, which gets you one of a certain kind of shape. If you cover over the little white kind of cement truck, then you get access to other shapes. And if you cover the big orange kind of, I don't know, like JCB kind of cherry picker type truck, you get the special shapes. So, yeah.
And what do you need to cover up in order to get sausages?
That's
the most important question.
If you make sausages out of bears, mate, we're going to have an issue.
Oh yeah, thematically that could go into some dark territory, couldn't it?
Yeah, it could.
So the 4 bears, like I say, no sausages. So you've got koalas, pandas, I think they're called Gobi desert bears, but we call them chip bears because they're kind of walking on yellow rocks, which look in the picture exactly like a portion of like chips, fries.
Well, there you go.
Fries for Americans, but yeah, the chip bears. And what was the other ones? Polar bears, of course. Polar bears. Yeah, so it's just a cutesy little game, but it's...
I'm up for it. Sounds cool.
It's just quick and easy. And this was another one that Adrian suggested I played. And he wasn't wrong. It's really good. Really,
How many
really
games have you bought that he suggested you play?
I mean, last episode he did say I was a salesman's dream about, and I can always lend them to you. It's like, no, I don't want to borrow them. I want to own them.
I want to have them in my collection.
About the acquisition.
I've got a Kallax to fill.
How about you, Ian? What have you been playing?
So I've managed to maintain my excellent record of having probably the lowest attendance of anyone in the group to any actual game night. So unfortunately, I missed Kerley's all-day birthday gaming.
Why was that?
I don't think we need to talk about that. No, so I met up with a friend for some drinks the day before, and
what usually happens for you and drinking
events ensued, and I was unable to attend the next day. I may or may not have fallen asleep on a train and ended up at the end of the line very late at night, many hundreds of miles from my home.
Classic Ian.
So yes, I unfortunately didn't make that. I actually almost can't remember the last group game that I did make it to. Probably 24-hour board game marathon was the last time I played anything with people in the group, from what I can recall.
Not that long ago, was it?
It wasn't that long ago.
No.
But what I did want to bring up was, I know, JP, you have played some Netrunner.
Yes.
Which is definitely something in my wheelhouse, and I was curious how that had gone for you, because you were on holiday, right? And you managed to get Rob hooked.
Yeah, I managed to take a couple of the kind of starter decks from Nisei that they've kind of released as a pack, because, as I kind of mentioned, I think in a few episodes ago, that I kind of purchased Netrunner because I kind of miss it. And
it was you that got me into it.
I know. Yeah,
I've got you to blame for
you have
my boxes and boxes of Netrunner that I have.
You have, and I just missed. I've missed it for a long time, but then I kind of just thought, no, let's give this a little go, and then have a little small collection to kind of play and not go too mad on it.
It's a really good time to be doing that, because, like you say, of the system gateway and system startup that Nisei are releasing at the moment, it's a really, really good time. There's kind of a lot of older cards being rotated out, so people don't have to worry about, oh, can I get hold of all this old Fantasy Flight era stuff? Like, you can just buy the new stuff now, and it's readily available. And yeah, I think I'm gonna get this wrong, but I think System Gateway, which is the one that effectively you get sort of dueling decks. Yes, kind of, you buy it and it's 2 pre-made decks that can just play. Yeah. And then obviously you can buy the filler to start deck building and doing more. But
it's exactly what I've done. So yeah, you get the starter decks, which is pretty much what me and Rob had played. We didn't really get into the deck building side of it, but
give it time.
But yeah, no, it was just really good fun to play again. Just getting back to the old school games, and yeah, he had a little proud moment of basically trapping me and winning by just doing enough net damage for me.
You got murdered.
Nice. I got murdered, and I think that was his crowning glory moment. And actually, that was my favourite game because it got competitive at that point. Yeah. But no, I got the System Gateway and System Update 2021 packs, which brings a lot of the older cards that I remember.
Yeah, like there's some reprints of like classic cards. So you've still got your hedge funds and your Sure Gambles and stuff, but with new artwork and new design and stuff.
It's pretty good though. Like I'm really impressed with what they've done.
Yeah, I know that there was a YouTube video that Shut Up and Sit Down put out about Netrunner recently, which is what turned a lot of people back onto it. And one of the only criticisms they had was around some of the earlier artwork from Nisei, which is a fair criticism. At the very start, everything was being fan sourced. There was no budget to pay for art really, and so they had to make do with what they could get. And a lot of it was just generated internally. They were using Deep Dream and stuff like that to produce kind of cyberpunky type art. But what I would say is that the newer stuff, I mean, it's up to the level that Fantasy Flight was. Yeah. I mean, in fact, literally, because there are at least half a dozen of the actual artists who were involved in producing art for the original Fantasy Flight game who have produced art for Nisei cards as well. So if anyone was worried about being put off by that and thinking, if it looks and feels a bit naff, then maybe I won't enjoy it. Like, I don't know what you think, JP, but I think the artwork that's on the new stuff is phenomenal.
I played it and didn't think, oh my god, this looks shonky. I kind of played it and gone, oh, Netrunner.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, right? Yeah. The base game is just such a good game. I mean, apart from people who love Magic, you'll probably be hard pressed to find people who can suggest a better 100%. Card game. It really is up there.
So I guess with that mentioned, on with the main topic, I guess. So we've called it Games That Stand the Test of Time, which is not quite the same as what's your top 5 games or something. It's, I think, what games do you come back to time after time? I guess it is quite a sort of nebulous description, but that's what I think it is. And I guess before we go any further, I think we probably have to give honourable mentions to the likes of Scrabble, Cluedo, Risk, even Monopoly. As those games have been around since like the 1930s, 40s and 50s. But we're not here to talk about them, are we? So before we jump into a big list, what do we think makes games that call you back?
I think I've been thinking about this all day actually, because I thought you might ask this. No, I thought you might ask this kind of thing. So, what makes a game that you come back to is, well, obviously it's got to be fun. I mean, if you want fun, you're never going to come back to it. But for me, it's variety and longevity. Mm-hmm. So it's being able to play the same game, have a completely different experience with it each time.
Totally agree.
And therefore, every time you're going to play, you're still exploring something new or something you've not seen before, a combination or an engine that you've not built, and being able to kind of push different buttons and pull different levers. So for me, that's what I enjoy, or that's what makes games make me want to come back.
I think as well, it's interesting, like you say, it's about the experience being different each time, and like there's certain games that create those moments, don't they? Like we've all had those experiences, and it's the thing I think that keeps people coming back to board gaming as a hobby is like it's those moments that you talk about time and time and time again, whether it's getting the rules wrong and something weird happening, or someone just having an incredible comeback from an unwinnable situation, or anything in between. Like it's those moments that you kind of, they create memories, and you're like, oh, I want to play that game again because we had that awesome experience, and then we can have a different awesome experience this time.
Yeah, I think like you were saying, JP, like the asymmetry of it, how you can change a certain thing, like pick a different faction or whatever the game mechanic is, that then means that you get just a totally different kind of game, still based on the same world or in the same thing. And I think that variation, I agree, is what definitely keeps something fresh no matter how many times you play it.
Yeah.
I think one of the interesting things is with that question, I don't disagree with anything you've said, completely agree.
Good.
But I would throw in, it makes a change, that's why I said it. Normally you speak rubbish, but we'll let you have that one. But no, what I think it links into variation actually, but for me, what makes a good game stand the test of time is probably interaction, which sounds weird, but for me, that creates a lot of variety because it totally depends on who you're playing with and like someone's mood and all this kind of stuff. Like the more interaction the game has, the more I think it will stand the test of time. Whereas if you end up too much in your own little box, it can feel very samey unless the game leans into a huge amount of variety like you were talking about. Like certain games get away with it, but for me, interaction, like that's why BSG will always be one of my favourites. Not because the game mechanics are amazing, although I love it, but it's to do with the interaction.
Actually, that's interesting because I was thinking the same, that there's lots of games that I can think of that, in my mind, stand the test of time, but don't have huge amounts of variety in terms of the actual gameplay, but it's the interaction that adds that variety. So even something like a dexterity game like Crokinole, right? Who had... what's the sweepstake for how long it would take me to mention Crokinole?
To be fair, it's well beyond what I thought.
It's taken longer than you thought.
This long, yeah.
But yeah, Crokinole's a great example where the gameplay and the patterns of play are very static. Especially as players become better, that it's quite standard the way a game of Crokinole develops. However, the personal interaction that you have with your opponent and the conversations that happen around it, I think, like you say, Kerley, that interaction is what makes that game stand the test of time.
Yeah.
If you had to play, I've tried playing Crokinole on my own, like with a Lazy Susan, and like trying to practice. It doesn't hold the same appeal. Yeah. I can't sit there for 3 hours and play Crokinole on my own. I'm not saying that I haven't, but it's not as an enjoyable experience as if you've got an opponent across the table or a group of people that can all get involved. That's why doubles works so well with Crokinole, because it's just the ultimate social game.
Yeah, and I think going into that, it's to do with why we play games, isn't it? I guess for some people, they only play because they want to, get maximum points, solve the puzzle the quickest, do whatever. And I guess they're playing an internal game. They're doing their thing. So maybe for them, all those things aren't relevant. But I think probably all of us, we actually enjoy spending time with each other. We enjoy kind of having the banter across the table. We actually want the interaction. And that's why we play the games. Not just because, of course, there's a bit of, it's quite nice to beat your last score, or it's nice to not come last again. Although I wouldn't know about that. But it's nice.
Sometimes I do come along. Yeah, then you get to come second to last.
But it's the whole point for me is the fun aspect, like you mentioned earlier, JP. And if it doesn't have that, it's never going to last any.
And I think as well that whole kind of like recreational versus competitive, because that's kind of how I'm interpreting what you're saying, is that kind of when you move into that more competitive space, and Kerley, you'll know with things like Magic, playing those games at a competitive level, a real competitive level, is just a totally different game to playing it with your friends. And different people are going to get different things out of it. But I do think one can lead to the other. And again, Netrunner, I think, is a good example where the way it grips you at the start with just the quality of the mechanics and the theme and how it all hangs together, the stories, that does carry through into competitive Netrunner quite well. And you still have all that fun, even when you're playing at a high level. Although it's still a balance, obviously. And there are people who wouldn't want to play competitively because it's playing the best decks, trying to win, kind of at the expense of all else. But it can be a mix, I think, is what I'm trying to say. You can sort of get both sometimes.
They're just facilitators, aren't they? Like, I think games generally are facilitators. Some do it a hell of a lot better than others. But yeah, I kind of get what you said, Ian, with the moments. And I instantly just think of the Civ game that we played because it had those moments. We had the nuclear explosion of Davey, and we had me fending him off at a critical point in the game, and it just creates those moments. That's what makes it memorable.
And like TI is a great example of that as well, isn't it? Because of how much everyone invests into a game of Twilight Imperium. Like there's always stories. Like it's like you've lived a decade of space war by the time you come out the other end of it.
I mean, one of the things that springs to mind for me is the rules need to be quite straightforward. So you're not having to keep, oh, wait a minute, let's check the rule book. Oh, wait a minute, does that do this? I'm not sure. So I'm not saying it has to be an easy game, but it has to make sense. It has to have...
You have to be able to internalise the rules quickly.
Yeah.
They can still be complex, but you have to feel like once you've had that first or second play, that everyone gets it.
Yeah.
And it's not, you're not having to constantly, remind me how that works. Although, I don't know, maybe Twilight Imperium is an example where that does still have to happen. But that might just be me, because I always forget the rules.
I'm going to put a counterpoint to this one and say that I don't think that's quite right, but not in the way that you think, purely and simply because of the fact that if you look at the rules for terraforming Mars, they're mental. Like, there's loads of them, absolutely loads. But what? You've played it so much.
I don't think I've ever even picked the rulebook up. I mean, I don't need to because I'm playing with very experienced players. However...
But you get the point. It's kind of...
Because it sticks.
It's just because you've played it so much and you love it so much that it's all stuck and everything else, So I think there is an element to what you're saying for sure, but I think if you like a game enough, the complication doesn't always matter even over time. And how often you get to play it as well,
Yeah, but that's the key thing.
Yeah, you can certainly overcome that.
Yeah,
that by just replaying, but also I suppose it's whether those rules are intuitive. I mean, from my memories of playing Terraforming Mars, I've also never really delved into the rule book. I've just played with you folks, and people have told me what I need to do, and it's always felt quite intuitive.
Yeah,
like the way it works is the way you'd kind of expect it to work.
Yeah.
So maybe it's not necessarily about complexity per se, but
intuitiveness of the rules.
How easy it is to take on board.
Yeah, I think. For me, quick turns is really important.
Yeah.
Not necessarily that it doesn't take long to do my thing, but that there's minimal downtime, because I just lose interest, quite frankly.
Yeah.
And that's not to say I've got a short attention span, I don't think, but if something, that someone else is doing takes 20 minutes and I haven't done anything at all, it doesn't matter how good the game is. You then start getting people looking on their phones or doing something else, and that just kind of pulls you out of the game, doesn't it? So either people need to be all doing things at the same time, or things need to be fairly rapid, and it needs to come back to you, or at least you need to be having to think about something.
It comes back to interaction, like Kerley was saying, right? So even if, each person's turn, quote unquote, takes 10 or 15 minutes, if during that turn they're having to, trade resources with other players or negotiate something, everyone's engaged. We've all had those games, where, like you say, someone's in a complicated spot or they've got a bit of AP or whatever, and I'm guilty of it as much as anyone. I can slow a game down like no one's business. But that's when you find a game that kind of doesn't lean towards that sort of steers you away from that happening. That, I think that has a better chance of standing the test of time.
Yeah.
Downfall of some very good games, that.
Yeah.
You either have to have quick turns or you have to have, like you said, an investment in other people's turns, like Twilight Imperium does great, doesn't it?
Perfect example.
I know that some of you haven't played that. I think, Becky, you've never played it. But you get to, when someone else plays something, you can spend one of your little tokens to do a smaller version of that, and you're waiting for them to do that. Yeah. So it gives you an investment in other people's turns.
So you invested to keep your attention on the board.
And you need to, like, if someone's doing something and moving into a space, then you're going, why are you doing that? What's your next move? Yeah. So you are constantly just evaluating the board state.
Because you can't just figure out, there's going to be some cases in TI where, like, there is only one thing you want to do that turn, so it really doesn't matter what the players before you do, but most of the time it is going to matter. Yeah. Like, they're going to change the state of the game. So it's almost like, it's like if you imagine chess, but instead of just having to wait for your opponent to play their turn, you have to wait for 6 opponents to play a turn before you can play a turn. It's just impossible to, fathom all of the different permutations. So
I think consistency of the group as well is a factor into the games that stand the test of time. So what I mean by that, kind of going to your rules kind of point, is you can have a great game, but if you can't keep a consistent group to come play that, that might tarnish it coming or becoming a game that stands the test of time. Even though in its own right it probably would be. And obviously it's going to differ from group to group, right? Because everyone loves different things, and that's cool. But I take Terraforming Mars as the example where there's, I don't know how many people in the group know that game like really well. Quite a lot, right? Probably most of us have played it. So you quite easily easily put that game up, and loads of people jump on, and you don't have to worry about anything. Just get on with it.
Yeah.
You can just
Yeah.
get on with the job.
That's probably in balance with what we were talking about around being easy to internalize the rules, right?
Yeah.
Because if your group of players is inconsistent, then you really do need a game where it's easy to internalize the rules.
Yes,
because if there's a new player joining every time, you don't want to have to do a whole teach every time when 3/4 of the table have played it 20 times. So, and yeah, Terraforming Mars is probably a really good example of that, where you could bring in a new player every game, and it wouldn't feel like a burden to the experienced players.
And there's a way of doing it for new players, because you have the beginner court,
Yeah,
and you get like the little leg up. And we're all playing like not hard mode but normal mode, but they're still competitive.
But it's in parallel and it's the same time.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that pulls into my sort of last point, which is it is easy to fall back into if you haven't played it a long time. You know, if there's only say 5 of you and you play every Friday, that's fine, because you know that you're going to play the same few games. When you've got a group as large and as sort of diverse in our favourite games or the kind of stuff we like as ours, then it does become a bit more of a point. So if you haven't played for a long time, can you still remember the rules?
Yeah.
And that is partly because and I think I definitely speak for myself, and I think JP, I think you're not guilty. I don't want to say guilty. I think, you know, allured by this is the cult of the new. So yeah, we play our old times lots, but we do get pulled. Oh, what's this new thing that I've seen on?
except JP doesn't let the new replace the old. He just does both.
I just find time for both of them.
Yeah.
That's the answer.
So yeah,
I'm definitely the other way round. I like me old kind of the old armchair and the old slippers, you know. So, something new, but automatically suspicious.
It's like, Kerley, we've got something new, and he's like, oh, for God's sake.
But then I play this new thing. I love it, and I'm like, oh, this new thing's great. It's like I know it always is.
So what else are our actual personal games that we think stand the test of time? A few of them have come up, I think, already. So for me, I'm just going to throw Terraforming Mars out there. And I am absolutely determined to get better at this game. So I've downloaded it on Steam. I'm trying to get better at my game start, which I know is where a lot of my problems kind of come from. Like, you know,
Not just yours.
the corpse I pick and, you know, the card selection I have. So I'm going to get better at this. It's going to happen. And yeah, for all the reasons we've mentioned before, the variety. Yeah, everything I like about games, Terraforming Mars has for me.
Yeah. And for anyone who says that's too recent a game, by the way, we are
6 years old.
It's 6 years old for starters, so it's not as new as people might think. But also, JP made a good point earlier on before we even started and said we're going to be playing that in 10 years' time.
Yeah.
100%, and I totally agree.
As well as stuff that has stood the test of time, we're looking at things that we think will stand the test of time. Yeah,
and I think that's valid, right? It's
and also 6 years is a long time
in board gaming
terms. Like that's not a new game.
It's
anymore.
not Uno. It's not Yahtzee.
No, exactly.
But then you can't compare it to those things either, because it's just on another level of awesome. And I like Uno and I like Yahtzee, but that's a quick 10-minute kind of thing, isn't it? Terraforming.
It's a different beast, isn't it?
100%.
I think for us, we've got what I call pre-GG and post-GG, right? So that's 2017. So it's before Gaming Group was established.
Gaming Group.
and then after the Gaming Group was established. So anything before is like, ooh, it's like the past. And all this back catalogue of games and cool stuff that we've not even tapped into yet.
That's really true, because so many of the games that we have played and do play, it's because people in the group have bought them because they're new. And it's like, well, this is the new thing. Cult of the new, like you were saying, Becky. And yeah, that's very different to all these games that were around before we started playing in an organised group. They're new to us, but you know, like Terraforming Mars was new to us when we first played it, but it wasn't new when we first played it.
Was it?
No, it's a couple of years old at least.
Obviously, Crokinole, Ian being the founder of Crokinole UK. I mean,
that's why I laughed at when I read your note.
Been here since what? Well, I read 1860, but you said a lot earlier.
No, I think we Googled and confirmed it was sometime in the 1800s anyway, up in Canada. So definitely an old game, not up there with like chess or backgammon or something, but
Mancala.
but certainly has survived for hundreds of years. But to be fair, until probably 3-4 years ago, whenever Shut Up and Sit Down did their Crokinole video, largely unknown outside of, not just outside of Canada, but outside of Ontario probably. You know, you talk to a random person in Toronto, they'll know what Crokinole is, but beyond that, no one had heard of it, and it's had a real resurgence. So whether that counts as standing the test of time or more, being a sort of sleeper game that just kind of hibernated for a few hundred years with some die-hard fans.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's gathering momentum now, and people are running events all over. Obviously, we had the UK Championships at the Games Expo, and a guy called Terry Brown has just run the Grand Prix of Crokinole up in Scotland, which went really well. So yeah, there's more of an appetite for organised Crokinole, which is fine by me. Definitely excited
I'm
to
going to
see.
have to play more Crokinole.
Oh, what a shame! I'll have to travel to Crokinole tournaments every weekend. Oh, damn!
Love it. Love it.
Anyone else got any game they want to throw out there to be
I've
included?
got a few. I mean, if we're talking old games that well, what's he called it? Pre-GG or whatever.
Pre-GG.
Lord of the Rings Risk was my absolute favourite back in the day.
I remember when you were moving out of one of your houses, we found like several copies of Lord of the Rings Risk under your stairs.
Still got them, mate. I bought
I was
the
digging
original
through
one
and I was like, "Oh, you've got Lord of the Rings Risk," and then I picked it up. It's like, "You've got another Lord of the Rings Risk underneath."
It was intentionally bought as well, just in case some of the pieces broke and it went out of publication or something. Yeah,
That's dedication. That is having a backup copy of your favourite game.
I mean, to be fair, I haven't played it in years, but at the time I was obsessed with it. It was just mixing what I considered to be an alpha game with, well, my favourite franchise. It was just like
it's a win-win for you.
Yeah, win-win for me. And I know it's mechanically maybe a little bit basic, but I just absolutely love it. Just absolutely love it. It fits exactly into my meta, if you like. So yeah, love Lord of the Rings Risk. More modern game. I'm going to give a shout out to Game of Thrones, actually.
That's on my list. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, mate.
That's fine. We can have the same game.
Yeah. So I absolutely love Game of Thrones. It would be one that I would buy if JP didn't already own it. I just think there's some mechanical issues with it, but for me it just makes a
some stabby issues with it.
there's some definite stabby issues. To me, it just, I don't know. There's something about it that the whole hidden movement factor of it, the whole backstabbiness, the interaction,
it creates those moments, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. There's something about it that I just love, and it's been around for quite a long time now. I think it was when the Game of Thrones was first out on TV, right?
I think the second edition was 2011.
Yeah, so I mean,
the
it's
first
been
edition,
around. Certainly, well before we were mega into the hobby.
Yeah. I was going to say, in terms of pre-GG, post-GG, obviously that was, as we've talked about before, the game that launched the group, wasn't it?
Well, I was about to say it's a shout out because it was when you invited me along for the first time.
That was it. Was for Game of Thrones,
and we still play it.
Yeah, we still play it.
Not often, but it comes up in the rotation.
And it's never unwelcome, is it? Every time it comes up, it fills up. Everyone wants to play it because it is just a great game.
Can we not play it on a weeknight? That's the only request. Because we want to go to sleep at some point.
I was talking to a patient at work, and I said, "Oh, what would you normally be doing if you weren't here with us?" "Oh, well, I'd be preparing for our game night." And I was like, "Oh, right. What kind of stuff do you play?" Thinking, well, I don't know, cards or she played Game of Thrones, so we had a good little chit chat there, which was.
Did you invite her into the group?
No, I didn't. I thought that might be crossing the work social life,
She's lying on her bed or whatever, and you're like, "Oh, you want to come to our gaming group?"
Soliciting her for our games. I thought that probably is not going to go down well.
Can I have my operation first?
We'll discuss it, mate.
JP, go on. You've got to throw one into the mix.
Twilight Imperium is there for me. We'll always play that. Even and probably the latest edition, because as soon as 5th edition comes out at some point in the next 10 years, no doubt we'll get that. We'll always play
iconic, isn't it?
We'll always play it, and it's it fits in the same bracket as Game of Thrones to me. It's that epic event type game, creating lots of moments and tiredness afterwards. But generally, we talked about TM or Terraforming Mars, but for me personally, I really love Lorenzo Il Magnifico as a game, and because I can play that with my family, I can play that with my friends, and it just gives me something. So for me, that's the game I'll always come back to as well. And then the obvious Too Many Bones. The only reason why I mention that is because it's made out of neoprene and it will stand the test of time.
You're just trying to get Too Many Bones in every episode if you can.
I will be a corpse,
it in,
right? And the worms would have eaten me. and that game will still be as pristine and
Well, make sure they bury you with it, mate. All right.
Presumably your ancestors will be playing it, right? It'll be passed down as a family heirloom.
Absolutely.
That trove chest.
Yeah, that trove chest, which probably would have rotted, to be fair, because that is like MDF wood. But the stuff inside...
Well, I'm sure you're going to get a metal one soon enough, right?
Yeah,
Bomb
we'll make
proof.
Something custom off Etsy.
yeah, something lead-lined, just in case we have atomic warfare. But no, yeah, I had to mention it, didn't I? It's awesome. But yeah, there's loads. There's loads.
Another one for me, Lords of Waterdeep. I
I was
know
going to mention Waterdeep. Yeah.
I know it's really what some people might consider quite basic, but it's quick to play. It's fun. It's easy to understand, and
I don't think it is. I mean, you're right. It's obviously at the less crunchy end of the scale, but I mean, especially when you add the what's the expansion called that adds all the extra stuff.
Scoundrels to Skullport or something.
That was it. Yeah.
Corruption.
Yeah, like it's got enough going on. I think that. Well, I mean, what do you think, Kerley? Because you're more of a crunchy gamer than me.
Yeah, I mean,
but you still like Waterdeep. I've definitely.
I mean,
seen
I
you enjoy
love
it.
Waterdeep. I mean, I know some people in the group don't think it maybe has enough variety, and
Hello.
yeah, I mean, I know JP doesn't hate it, but I
hate
think it's definitely not one that he would volunteer to play. I don't think. But yeah, I really enjoy it. I think there's definitely a place for it. Plays a lot quicker, plays quite fast. You can teach it to new people. For me, it's a great gateway game to our group. I know there are better potentially gateway games, but if you're trying to get into our group, not trying to get in like it's some sort of exclusive club.
If you're at your audition,
Have you got the golden ticket?
But you know what I mean? If you're like starting out in games and we want to see if maybe you'd be interested in playing our type of games, then that would be a great one to see if like, oh, does that one click for you?
That's a really
And
good
it's-
point. That the games that last, it's going to depend on what you and your group play. Like there be other groups out there who are hardcore into dungeon crawlers.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
for them, Waterdeep wouldn't be a game that stands the test of time because it's not representative of what they play. But yeah, you're right. Waterdeep is it has a lot of elements that you'll then find elsewhere in other games that we all like. So.
Yeah. But there's enough variety there for me. Like it's got a little bit of engine building, a little bit of worker placement. You've got the whole corruption mechanic, which makes it for me. So there's a lot in there for me, and I will say it certainly lasts a test of time for me. And I know Becky loves it, you love it, Rob loves it. At the end of the day, it's just a little bit of a lighter game. So anyone who's towards the lighter end of the worker placement is going to love Lords of Waterdeep and will probably play it for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, 100%. I would never not play it. Like I'm not to the point where I go, oh no, I'm not.
But you wouldn't
actually-
suggest it. You wouldn't push for it.
I have the luxury where I can be choosy now. Being honest, right? If we were playing, I don't know, 4 games a month, and then that was one of the games, I'd play it.
Yeah.
But we played like 44.
if Tic-Tac-Toe was one of the games that we were
would,
playing
yeah.
4 times a month, you'd still join in.
I'll be all over that. Like crap. But no,
Wingspan is a similar one,
Yeah.
so sort of in the level of Lords of Waterdeep. It's it's not worker placement, but it's fairly easy.
egg placement.
And a commonality between Lords of Waterdeep and Wingspan, you can get the really, really nice little meeples that we've got. So, that's
I
maybe...
mean, those eggs do look delicious.
Yeah.
How you haven't eaten them all is
know.
beyond me.
I know.
Tried. Yeah.
I've just got a quick shout out to something I think will definitely be played in 10 years. It's very, very new, but I think Just One should be up there.
It's a great party game, isn't it?
Great party game. Really...
Play with your nan, can't you?
Yeah, you could play with absolutely any level of person as long as they could, if not hold a pen, someone could hold the pen for, anybody can play that. It doesn't matter if you can spell.
For anyone who doesn't know, it's a game with a rotating basis of who's trying to guess a certain word, and all the other players are trying to give clues to that word. But there's rules around what you can and can't do. But it's that kind of hidden answer mechanic, isn't it?
It's just clever, it's simple.
Yeah, and
Great.
it's easy. You could play it for 5 minutes. You could play it for 5 hours. Maybe you wouldn't want to do that, but as long as you've got a pen that works and a little whiteboard.
My only question around Just One being in the stands the test of time, do you think the party game meta moves more swiftly than most others? Because I probably do. And I'm not saying that one might be the standout or one that stands around like, I don't know, charades or something that's still around in 30 years, but I do wonder whether the party game meta is a bit quicker.
It's a good point.
Yeah.
Like, there's always a new thing.
Yeah, I think it's a very kind of zeitgeisty, what's fun at the minute. But I think that one just let's all guess a word. I mean, it harks back to games like you just said of charades, doesn't it? It's
Well, yeah, and it's
similar.
basically a small evolution of what I've known as the Rizzler game. You know, where you have a person's name and you stick it on a cigarette paper to your head, and then you have to talk to people and try and figure out who you are. It's a very similar mechanic.
Questions.
Yeah, it's a very classic mechanic, isn't it? So it just I agree with Becky that it does feel like it'll last, but you're not wrong, Kerley.
The example that
party games, there's always something new coming on.
Yeah, the example that just popped in my head as you said that, Kerley, was Avalon.
Yeah.
And Avalon, we played the crap out of that. we absolutely played the crap out of it to the point where I thought we're never going to not play this. And then we stopped playing it. And we still play it, but it's not...
It still comes out from time to time, but does it feel like it stood the test of time? No, we probably did burn out on it, didn't
we played it at your birthday. It was fun, but it wasn't like it was. No. It might be in the group because there's a lot of new players there, but maybe that's me.
That's a game that's highly driven by the personalities of the people playing it, right? So you get a very different game depending on what mood people are in and who's there. But
I'm less excited to play it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Have we got anything else that we're desperate to talk about, games that stand the test of time, or do we feel like we've given it?
I think that's most of the things I think. I mean, we briefly touched on Netrunner earlier. I don't think there's huge amounts more to say, but I do think when it comes to card games, that's one that... But you've only got to see the fact that even when the publishers stopped producing it, it still continues. The community wanted it.
I thought it was dead.
Yeah.
And then the fact that I rebought it...
Yeah.
Well, that shows you, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I actually don't want it to die.
That is literally the
the fans have kept that alive.
Yeah.
And it isn't even just on the strength of the community of people who play it. It's the strength of the game.
Yeah.
You know, the shut up and sit down video is a big boost, but there are plenty of people who knew Fantasy Flight Netrunner, Android Netrunner, who are now being reminded that that's a game that still exists, and they're like, oh yeah, that was really good, I should play that again. So it's kind of, it stood the test of time kind of for individuals as well, who kind of ignored it for 5 years or something. So
and that's what kind of put me off, was the fact that it was it was dead.
Yeah.
And then, but it's still here. And it's like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have jumped out.
You got the resurrection, and now you're there with it again.
Now it's like, let's get back in this thing. So.
Cool. Well, there you go. That about rounds it up, I think. So now it's time for questions. And seeing as we have Kerley and JP with us today, the question I've pulled out of the list is about crowdfunding.
What's that?
So specifically aimed at you guys. So our own member Rhiannon asks, do you routinely support crowdfunded projects? If not, why? And what do you consider when pledging for a crowdfunded project?
Well, we did a whole episode on this one, didn't we?
Yeah.
So you guys are loving it.
We've done a little bit on it. I got to be honest, I've pretty much stopped.
I've waned off a bit.
Yeah. I'm now at the point where I will only do a crowdfunding project for something that I already know in advance is going to be awesome. So for an example, and this isn't a good example because JP's baby is like, if Minecraft brought out a new game, if he wasn't, I'd be all over it. Right? And
he knows I'm going to get it.
There are exceptions to that, like, Heroes of Might and Magic, the new one I've spoken about before, that's coming out in November. I'll definitely be pledging that, but only because I've been obsessed with that computer game for God knows how long.
And you did play it at the expo, didn't you?
I did play at the expo, definitely got potential, got some really good stuff. The designer was there, talking to him, he's really passionate about it. So yeah, I'm sold, so I'm going to be getting that. But for the most part, I don't do it on a whim anymore, is kind of the point.
Yeah.
It's just, for me, and I think this is kind of the popular opinion, for me, it has... The price point has gotten so high, not only but it's just like the base game, all the expansions, but if you add all of that in, you go, I can just about justify it, and now you've still got to think about VAT, P&P, the global shipping prices, paying your energy bills. It's now getting to the point where it is almost unviable. So yeah, I think we might even see a change in the actual way they go about them.
I was going to say, do you think like things like Kickstarter and those kind of things have kind of had their chips? Do you think they've seen their best times?
I think when you take into account the fact that in the UK, I think it's going to go downhill. Yeah. But I think it's worse in the UK than a lot of other places. Like if you're in the EU or the US, does it really matter about the global shipping crisis quite so much? Well, not quite so much, because you have European
distribution hubs.
Distribution hubs, so it makes it. But they'd have to have a UK specific distribution hub to do it. It's
do you think
all
as
of
well
these different factors?
Over the pandemic, there was a big boost for the likes of Kickstarter because people weren't going out, basically, and they were bored.
What's for me?
Weren't spending money on going out or going on holiday or whatever. So people had a bit more disposable income. And now we're in a very opposite situation where obviously everything's getting more expensive, both Kickstarters and just cost of living as well. It feels like maybe that was a wave that these sites were never going to be able to fully ride out anyway. It was always going to be a bubble eventually. Maybe that's what's happening now.
I agree. I think what you said is pretty much hits the nail on the head for me. Like, if it's chip theory games, if it's Mind Clash games, I will check it out. No worries. And I'm now having to tell myself, like, I don't need to own every freaking title of these publishers. I don't need to do it. But
Yes,
I
you do.
I need to do it.
You still sound like you're trying to convince yourself.
A little bit. But I know, like, chip theory is a good example. Actually, like, I know that if I don't get it then,
you'll just pay more for it later.
It's the cheapest it will ever be. I know that for a fact, because that's the way they do it. They don't do this, we'll do it and it's this price, and then we'll do it to retail, and you go, hang on a minute, I could have got that.
Yeah, because they want to incentivise people to get in.
I know it will be. That's why they do it, and they're very open and transparent about that, and I quite like that. It's like, if you want it now, it's going to be the cheapest you'll ever get it. But you don't have to get it now, you can get it later, but you will pay. And I know you, JP, that you're going to want this at some point. So
you might as well pay less now instead of paying more later.
So there are certain publishers like those two for me that I will always check out. But what I found interesting, and I know you're going to probably touch upon this, Becky, later, is that Mind Clash have released a new line of games that they are not going to crowdfunding. They're going straight to pre-order web store. And I find that brilliant, because I hope actually that now they do that and avoid the whole crowdfunding thing. Just go straight to retail, like Stonemaier games do.
I think that Mind Clash have obviously heard of me, and they know, like, well, if we make it a bit easier, and we just put some really, lovely wishy-washy artwork on here,
and
Becky will buy it, 100%.
They'll get Adrian to recommend it to you, and then it's a done deal.
They've probably sent him an email or something, I'll come on to it in a bit, but I think the crowdfunding thing, for people like me, I'm just way too impatient for Kickstarters. There is no way I could sit there and wait that long. And I love an extra little bonus content, special cards, swanky pieces that no one else can have. That's right up my street. But I know I am not good enough with waiting, because I drive myself mad checking it every day, waiting for these updates and just getting... And I'd almost get myself over the point of not wanting to play. Because I've built it up so much, and it's never going to, meet my expectations.
Yeah, but that's where Kickstarter has changed, I guess, from what it was originally intended. Is the fact of, if you didn't back it, Becky, it would never come.
Yeah. I was about to say now it's changed a lot.
Yeah, now it would have come anyway. It's whether they get the funding beforehand and they get people to buy into the add-ons, and it's become a totally different beast. And now there are still some that wouldn't get made, but I think it's becoming less and less like that, and that for me isn't probably a positive.
I think that's a pattern across all crowdfunding, not even just board gaming crowdfunding. It used to be that you would back things speculatively. It's a case of, right, I want this thing to exist, so I'll put some money up now with no guarantee that I will ever actually get the product, in the hope that if I do get the product, I'll A, have got it for a lot less than retail, and B, got it before everyone else. And that just isn't the case anymore. Like you say, you've got things like, Frosthaven, that it's like, well, I think it's going to hit its backing target. I think that game probably will happen, kind of thing. It's just it's a different
million later.
It's a different beast. I mean, they did what, like 12 million quid on the first day or something. It was ridiculous.
It wasn't quite that much, but it was record breaking. That's for sure.
So I guess just crowdfunding in general has changed. And again, maybe that's slightly pandemic related. Again, because of the people's different financial position then compared to now. People maybe were more willing to take a punt on something. But from what I see on Kickstarter when I occasionally have a look, it's mostly looks like publishers who could absolutely just take the game to retail themselves. It's not a case of we need the funding to make the game happen. It's a case of we think we can get more people to go for the game this way by incentivizing them with, you know, extra stuff.
Yeah.
And build hype, and then still get the retail sales anyway. So it's just a different business model now, I think.
It is, but I personally think that if we could get back to how it was, and not use it as this glorified PR marketing pre-ordering system.
It'd be nice to see tiny or very new publishers and developers, someone taking a chance.
Absolutely.
On them, you know.
Absolutely.
And instead of it being like, oh yeah, I'll put up £300 for a pledge on this next massive game with billions of miniatures, and be like, no, there's this interesting game idea that I've never seen anything like this. I'd love to see that get made. And if I don't back it for £50, it might not get made.
One of the most perfect examples is Eurydice Games with Flick Fleet, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah,
exactly.
And these chaps who are basically manufacturing and not only publishing but building, manufacturing the whole game out of a garage.
Yeah.
And storing in houses, and that's like how
their whole production pipeline is just fascinating to me. I mean, if you haven't checked it out already, the previous episode where me and Davey chatted to them, and also the YouTube videos on their website are just amazing. They walk you through the whole process, start to finish, of like designing, producing, distributing, like all the manufacture. It's wild. Like, and that's what you want to see. You want to see people like that who are taking a chance, you know, get rewarded for it. Because they're doing something no one else has done.
And they're using it going right. They're using the platform because they need to know how much acrylic to buy.
Yeah.
So that they can crank out the copy. Like, it's...
Exactly.
Because without it wouldn't happen.
They haven't got massive cash reserves or assets that, as a business, they can use to bankroll that. If they build, print, make 1,000 copies and they only sell 200 of them, they're going to have lost a lot of money.
Yeah, they've got to store this
and
stuff,
they're not going to be able to survive that way. So
exactly.
it's great for publishers like that, I think. And I agree. I'd like to see more of that, and less, you know, 8-figure backing.
Pre-order system.
But then, funnily enough, you know, that's to put a counter argument to that. I think me and you, who are the biggest crowdfunders here, probably have both said we're probably going to dial it down and only go on stuff that we know. Which, let's face it, Mindclash could publish their own games. You know, who's the other one that you like? Chip Theory Games could publish their own games, and they choose not to. They choose to do it on Kickstarter for that reason. And you've said basically you're going to buy everything they have, and it's exactly the same with me. So I don't think I'm particularly inclined to go for those Eurydice games.
No, and that's probably why it's developed that way, right?
Exactly, and I think the whole platform has kind of gone a different way with it, and I just kind of, I don't know, maybe if the bigger publishers weren't doing that anymore and it was just smaller ones, I might be more inclined to give something a go. I don't know. There's a
just look at Stonemaier, right? There's a big name, big publisher.
Yeah.
They used to use it and they don't. They stopped. And the way that they generate hype or interest in the game, I don't know, I just prefer it because they tease it, they say it's coming, and then, you know, you're not having to wait 2 years.
Yeah.
It's literally coming in 2 months.
Yeah.
So, you know, you're at that kind of hype peak and you get the game, it's here, great. and you're playing it and you're talking about it. But obviously, for them to do that, they're going to have to make an educated guess on how many copies to print. And do they do 50,000? Do they do 150,000? And they're in a position now that they can make that risk and make that bet and have more, I suppose, statistical data to work out whether they would sell it.
And I suppose the thing is with Stonemaier, they're kind of, I wouldn't say an exception, but they've got relatively few games that are almost all incredibly popular.
Yeah.
So everything they buy isn't a massive risk to them, basically. Because I imagine a lot of the reason even the bigger publishers do go to Kickstarter, and I understand it, is risk management, right?
Yeah,
risk
100%.
mitigation.
What if you put a dud out there? I mean, the board gaming space is very saturated these days.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of misses, and even big publishers have misses, don't they? And do you want that miss to cost you 100,000, or do you want it to cost you 2 million? And that's perhaps the difference between going crowdfunding or going retail. Yeah.
So interesting question, I would say.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's not an easy one to answer. We're all hooked. Well, me and Kerley.
So we're almost at the end with our penultimate turn. What have we all got in the pipeline? What are we looking forward to, gaming or non-gaming? JP, I'm throwing it to you.
Oh, I've just recently purchased Inish, which is spelled Innis. But it's Inish. which is a dudes on a map game, basically. And it's, I don't know, about 6 years old. Celtic themed. Very kind of Irishy artwork looking cards.
Nordic, kind of Viking-y.
Yeah, kind of pretty. It's very pretty, if you like that kind of thing. But what kind of attracted me to it is I've heard about this game for years and heard people talk about this game. And it comes from Matago, I think, who did Cyclades and Comet, which are also similar style games. But it's always one that's been kind of highly rated. And I don't know, I just kind of fancied it. And what attracted me to kind of getting it was the fact that it is on the medium-y, I wouldn't say light, but it's on the medium end. It's not something that's hugely complicated. It plays relatively quickly. And the action cards that you have, I think they're like 17 in the game, and you draft them between you. So it's kind of like the action cards allow you to move your dudes, which are like your clans that you have on the board, allow you to explore more tiles, allow you to kind of have clashes with people and all sorts of different things. And the fact that you have to draft them with other players to determine what you can do is interesting, because it's like, I really need to go over there and I need to get that thing. And also the way the drafting mechanics work, which is not kind of the same as like your Terraforming Mars or other drafting games. It's like where you've got your 4 cards, you pick one, pass the next load to the next player, and then you put that one that you've picked back in the hand of the 3 that you just received, and then you pick 2 of them. So you don't have to keep the one that you picked. So you're curating, crafting your hand based on the flow of cards.
That tactic might change partway through, sort of thing.
Yeah, you're like, and then obviously there's going to be a bit of hate drafting in there. So you're like, oh no, I don't want to give Kerley that attack card because I know exactly what he's going to do with it. So do I keep that? And yeah, all that kind of stuff.
Sounds like me.
And it sounds like, I don't know, it's quite an interesting way of doing it. And then obviously you've got these little lands, and you get extra cards for having majority in the lands as well. And you've got these other things that you can do. But yeah, I just thought it looked quite interesting. Keen to give it a go, so I just thought I'd pick it up and got that in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's me.
Kerley, how about you?
Well, I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to give an honourable mention, but I'll probably discuss it nearer the time. To Northgard has finally arrived and is in the I don't know what you would call it, the grinder. It's ready to go into the grinder.
The mince.
Yeah, so we've got that in the loaded dice event queue. I forget when it is, but it's about 3 weeks away. So I'm looking forward to that one. My latest Kickstarter that I don't back anymore, of course. That's my latest one to turn up. But the one I'm actually going to mention is someone else's game, Shock Horror. JP's. He owns all my favourite games.
Hi.
Carnegie. We've got coming
Tomorrow.
up. Yes. Is it tomorrow?
It's tomorrow.
Okay, it's tomorrow. Fair enough. So I'm going to be here tomorrow, and I'm really looking forward to that.
4-player as well.
Yeah. So yeah, me and JP. It was a total surprise to me, similar to Anno for you, I suppose, and Bärenpark earlier on. We were talking about it. I almost didn't come in the end because I think someone cancelled last minute, and it was almost went out the window. But you know what? The mechanics looked reasonably fun. The theming looked a little bit, I don't know what you would call it, bland, I suppose,
Dry,
for
isn't
me.
it?
Yeah. And then I turned up, and it was like, oh, I love this game. There's so much to it, so many good decisions, and yeah, it just really spoke to my efficiency, kind of, And we played 2 games, didn't we? And
Yeah,
we played really good fun.
Right.
So I'm looking forward to that. We played 2-player, 2 games in a row, and we're going to play a 4-player. So yeah, I think that's going to be a real interesting one. But yeah, we'll talk about that one maybe a little bit more depth after we've played it again.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think the cool thing about it is there's like 20 turns in the game, and you get to pick only a quarter of them.
Yeah.
So 5 of them in terms of what you're doing. And then the other players are going, well, I'm going to do this. And you go, bastard. Because they know that you've not set yourself up for a construction action or a HR action or whatever. Again, it sounds very businessy because it really is. So the theme is not going to be everyone's cup of tea, but mechanically it's fun. Yeah. It's fast. And I don't know, it's satisfying having your little meeples moving around in the departments and doing stuff. Yeah, it's great. Love it.
Yeah. So looking forward to that.
Cool, Ian.
For me, I need to get my name on some lists.
You
I
need
need
to
to have a
play
look
some
at the.
games,
I
mate.
know. I need to actually play some games. I'm going to lose my podcast spot if I don't play some more games. But no, like we were saying earlier, I think getting a Netrunner night in would be good. Certainly, the 3 of us
I'd be
are
down for
interested,
that.
and I think Rob would probably join us to make it 4 maybe. So we'll definitely get that in the diary. Beyond that, I still want to play Ark Nova. So I need to look for when that next is going to hit the table because.
Well, put it on the request list.
Yeah,
mate.
that's it. I'll put it on the.
I've had a
on the
little.
list.
I should play that again soon. Yeah, I own it.
I still haven't played it, so
You should
yeah,
definitely
I've
play it.
only heard good things.
Well, we've got a 4-player set right up then with us, so
yeah.
let's do it.
Exactly. I mean, what are you guys doing after this? And then outside of board gaming, there's a few movies coming out soon that look quite good. There's that Don't Worry, Darling. I don't know if anyone's seen a trailer for that with Florence Pugh and Harry Styles. Yeah, looks interesting. The kind of mysterious setup where these people are living in this sort of constructed community that appears to be in the 1950s, but there's implications that maybe all is not as it seems.
It's a bit like the Stepford Wives kind of.
Yeah, a
vibe,
little
isn't it?
bit, little bit. Yeah, it looks the trailers are quite mysterious, so it could be a dud, but it looked quite interesting. So I look forward to that. And then I've got mini golf coming up and stuff like that. All my other hobbies, yeah.
You've got a life that isn't board gaming.
I know.
You're not fitting in here.
This is the problem, and this is why I'm concerned that I'm going to lose my spot. Is I need to dedicate a bit more time to the old board gaming.
So I'm going to talk about Astra. So we mentioned it a little bit earlier. So it is the nearest to a Kickstarter that I'll ever get because I've actually pre-ordered it from a large online retailer, which isn't usually my preference. I would have rather bought it. I know. I would have rather bought it from Mindclash themselves and got the extra promo cards and shiny things. But it went from around £28 if you bought it from the online retailer to about £40 from Mindclash for all the reasons we've just said. It's mostly postage and packaging. I think if that was the only option, you'd just do it. But I'm afraid the big online retailer got my money instead. Astra it's like the latest Mindclash game we just mentioned, and it is my first foray into their stuff. It is on the lighter end. As we were discussing, they're very, very crunchy normally.
Yeah, they've basically done a separate line called it Mindclash Play. And
it's a bit infantilising. I'm not sure I'm a massive fan of that. However,
Mindclash Play.
Slightly patronising, isn't it?
It is,
It's like,
yes.
Here's the games if you can't understand our big boy games.
Yes.
ABC Mindclash.
Yes.
Yeah. My first
Euro. Mindclash.
However, for people like me and Becky, that is also exactly what we want.
Yeah.
So we'll just have to accept being patronised because it's true.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, do you want to play?
It's like they're not wrong, but still, you didn't need to say it. Yeah.
So it's about collecting stars and being astronomers and building constellations. The artwork, like I said before, looks absolutely beautiful. And as we all know, that is one of my huge, I have to tick that off on a game, otherwise I'm just not going to want to play it. I did try and research the artist to see if they'd done anything else, board game wise or anything, but I couldn't see anything. She's called Scylla Fakiti or something.
Okay.
And it looks fairly non-aggressive. You sort of collaborate with other people where you're discovering the constellations. Whoever completes the actual particular constellation gets that ability, but everyone that has added to it gets the boons from the bottom of the card. So there's a little bit of kind of co-op, but not strictly cooperative. So it is getting released at Essenspiel this October, so hopefully we won't have too long to wait. I'm sure we'll let you all know what we think about it as soon as it gets here and we get it to the table.
You'll have it in November. Yeah.
I hope it won't be too long because it looks good.
Just look great.
It's really good. Yeah.
If it's got pretty pictures and nice components, Becky's sold.
Well, the components are the stardust, which is like a plastic, looks like a plastic, like...
It's the same as the Tricarion stone in Tricarion.
Oh, okay.
It's the same as the thing in Cerebria, I forget what it's called, Willpower. And in Septima, it's the same as the little red gemstone. It's the same cut thing. So
did they have too much left over and they decided to...
I think they've got the mould.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
I can't argue with that.
What colour should we do? Green?
I mean, what is Stardust meant to look like? I mean, so they've decided, and that's it. So,
Claire Danes, if you remember the film, I wouldn't mind.
Well, I don't think she'll fit in the box.
I love that film, and I quite like Claire Danes as well, so that works.
On that note,
that took a turn.
It's a bit sexy then.
So on that note, we have reached the end of the podcast. So it's time to pack up all our meeples, unless of course it's JP's game where only he is allowed to put things back in the box.
Damn right.
No touching. Thanks to my fellow gamers at the table tonight, and thanks to all of you for listening at home or wherever you happen to be. If you've enjoyed the show, please like, subscribe and review on your podcast player of choice, and tell everyone you know to download it. And send us your questions, we always want those, and we can answer them on a future episode. You can contact us by sending an email to players@whoseturn.co.uk or go to our Facebook page, Whose Turn Is It Anyway podcast. We've got our Instagram page at Whose Turn Podcast and our TikTok for your silly videos at Whose Turn Is It Anyway. We'll be back again in another 2 weeks with another episode, but until then, whose turn is it?
Not Ian's, he never turns up.